was a soap opera on TV that my afternoon babysitters used to watch. I still remember the spinning globe and the announcer's mournful voice at the start of each show. As the world turns. Lately, I feel like I'm living in a soap opera, but the globe is not only spinning at top speed, but flying completely out of its orbit. What were once considered virtues are anathema to today's mindset. I remember reading that women's magazines used to focus more on developing character than external beauty. For instance, 10 New Year's resolutions were based on how to become a better person, a better wife, a better mother, employee, based on how to improve one's character rather than merely looking good. Today, I'm not sure I'm even supposed to ascribe a gender preference to a magazine. In fact, in today's culture, we're not supposed to ascribe a gender to a person, since it appears to be so fluid and solely based on the current feelings of the individual, and that could change at any time. Nevertheless, the magazines I would deem directed at women are so vulgar, and they encourage the most degrading activity and the most self-centered attitudes. I literally feel sick to my stomach that these lies are being fed to young women and even children as attractive or to be sought after or achieved, and even the path to joy. Our book, the Bible, provides insights into keeping our hearts pure. It reminds us that our acts of worship are actually offensive to God if our hearts do not line up with our actions in reverence, obedience, in purity and holiness. Our guest today is not a woman of the book, but rather a man of the book who enables and encourages women to serve God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to grow in their knowledge of Him and His instructions. Rabbi Yosef Benarroch was born in Tangiers, Morocco, and was raised in Winnipeg. He received a bachelor's degree in phys ed and biology, as well as a teaching certificate from the University of Manitoba. He attended a yeshiva in Israel and received his rabbinic ordination in 1989. A fluent speaker of Hebrew, English, and Spanish, he is currently the rabbi and director of Midrashet Eshel Seminary for Sephardic Women in Jerusalem, as well as the senior rabbi at Congregation Adas Yeshurun Herzlia in Winnipeg. I first met Rabbi Benarroch when leading a women's prayer tour to Israel in October 2015. At the very last minute, our tour itinerary had to change completely due to the sudden escalation of a stabbing intifada, and safety is always our first priority. As I was scrambling to shift the schedule, our friend in Winnipeg suggested we meet with her rabbi at his women's yeshiva. And we did. He graciously gave us a tour, and little did any of us know it would be so enlightening, and for some people, it was actually the highlight of our trip. In Winnipeg, visiting Rabbi Benarroch at the synagogue has been far and away the highlight each time we offer our Bridges for Peace Israel, a Journey Through Time 10-week course. Listening to his knowledge and insights into the Hebrew Scriptures is a thrilling experience. The verse in Proverbs 31 I've chosen for Rabbi Benarroch, or more accurately his students, is verse 10. An accomplished woman who can find, her value is far beyond rubies. Well, it's a great privilege to have our token male guest, Rabbi Yosef Benarroch. And I'm so glad, even though this series is called Women of the Book, it's wonderful to speak to a man, especially a man of the book, who teaches women, and to hear more about God's design for male and female. So how did you become the director of a women's seminary?
It was something actually I wanted to do all of my life. Of course, I'm a rabbi, and of course a rabbi means an educator. One of the things that was missing, especially from my background, I was actually born in Morocco, which puts me as a Sephardic Jew, a Jew of the Middle East. And unfortunately, when I looked out at what was happening with women's education, in my world at least, it was actually lacking. There was actually no school anywhere in the world for post-high school Sephardic women to study the Bible, the Torah. And I had this idea to create this school. And actually, I think from up in heaven, they actually made it happen. There was another woman who was actually thinking about the same proposition. A rabbi in Jerusalem actually put the two of us together. And that's how the idea was born out. And we started this school. It was actually quite exciting. Today, it has really taken off. It's in the heart of Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem. And we started, I think it was with 9 girls when we started the program. This is more than 10 years ago. And today we have over 40 students coming to the program.
Yes, the location is amazing. And I will talk about that a little bit later. But why do you believe it is important for women to study together and apart from men?
I think that, studies have shown, first of all, that women study better when they are separated. I think that, when it comes to religious studies, there's no question that it's beneficial for men to study on their own, for women to study on their own. The type of studies, it's tremendously beneficial, no distractions at all. And, it definitely has proven itself on the ground.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
Yes, and I know several, again, very, for lack of a better word, strong women, Jewish women and Christian women who are not, it wouldn't have anything to do with being lesser than or it's just the issue of being distracted, especially in a certain age range where your mind is already going to sort of an inevitability. And but when you're studying, it's
No
good
question.
to just have that out of the picture. How would you sum up, this is going to be a big question, the calling of women as different in some respects than men, according to the Torah?
First of all, the Torah places a tremendous amount of emphasis on the idea of family. And I think this is true of all religions, but certainly in Judaism, one of the things that's kept Judaism alive for such a long time is the importance of the family, the centrality of the family. And there's no question that women play such an important role in that, the centrality of the family. And so therefore, Judaism places a tremendous amount on importance on motherhood. There's nothing wrong with motherhood. It's actually considered to be a very, very important thing to do, divinely inspired to do. And as a result of that, there's different roles between men and women, just from the point of view that women are the ones who take care of the family. Of course, the husband helps, and I help my wife tremendously, but she's the one who gives birth. She's the one who has a tremendous role in family life.
But I know from talking to you before that it's not like there's boundaries that never get crossed. You cook, and you're a better cook than your wife, and that's probably the same in my marriage as well. But there is a uniqueness, and there is, again, they're not lesser than. I'm always sad when I hear people refer to a sense in Judaism that the women are considered not even people, because the men are the ones that's studying. How do you address that?
Well, first of all, in Judaism especially, the idea or the whole concept of study in women, it has changed drastically over time. And today, I would say that in the Jewish world, depending on what circle you're in, women have just as much access to Jewish learning as men do. And so, for example, in our school, there's nothing that the women study in the school that is not being studied in a men's yeshiva, for example. And so today, access is equal for women in terms of Jewish studies. And so I would say that, anyone who would say that women are seen, second rate in terms of Jewish studies, that is completely not correct.
Right.
And I know, by the way, some tremendous women who are scholars in their own right. I actually studied with one of them, one of the great Bible teachers, Nechama Leibovich. This is many years ago.
Yeah. And I think the other part that I'm aware of is, for instance, I've heard people say, well, I went to sit next to a rabbi on the bus and he got up in a big huff and left and just didn't want to be next to a woman. I know that's not the reason. Can you address why would a religious Jewish man get up
Right.
and not want to sit next very close quarters with a woman?
Well, the first thing I can say is, first of all, that rabbi wouldn't be me, that's for sure.
Right.
But I think it has to do a little bit with modesty, and there's a lot of factors involved in that. It would be the proximity of where they're sitting, dress and so on. We live in a world that's less modest today than certainly it was yesteryear. And I think, again, there's a lot of different opinions out there in terms of how people handle that situation. From my personal point of view, I think it's really important to think about, the respect and the dignity of the person that you're sitting next to, and not to create a situation where you would belittle them or embarrass them. And so that, to me, that is far more important. But again, there are other people out there who may not feel comfortable in that situation, and we should respect that. They should not make a scene out of it,
right?
But we should definitely respect.
But what's in their heart maybe isn't that the women are lesser than. It's maybe the protection of their own relationship, their own marriage, their own wife, just wanting to make sure they're not finding themselves in an awkward situation, because marriage and family and is so highly regarded, and women are highly regarded. Would you even say that, I have heard, and I'm not the expert, of course, that women have a higher spiritual sense in Judaic thought, and that's why the men have to go beat their brains over Torah every day in certain segments. Again, like you were saying, in your seminary, women are learning the same things, but what might have appeared in, say, the ultra-Orthodox circles, that it's because the women weren't worthy of learning. It was because, no, they're already attuned to Hashem, to God, and the men have to have it kind of beaten into them a little bit more.
Well, first of all, our tradition calls women a bat melech, and bat melech means the daughter of a king, right? So it's, first of all, it's really important to make that point. And on many levels, I do believe that women are just a little bit more intrinsically spiritual. I can only speak from my own experience with my wife, but when my wife prays, she basically puts me under the table. She has this way of prayer that just is kind of like a natural connection. I have to work a little harder at it. There's no question.
And I love that there is. It's an honoring. The heart is to honor and to not in any way see the roles because one is assigned to something that is lesser than. We're all being called up to being who we are. But I think when you talked about modesty, certainly we almost have lost respect for that word. It's almost as if we just don't believe in that anymore. And what would you say about how the Torah teaches us in that regard? I mean, not to be specific, I know in different cultures and in different settings, somebody can feel modest, and then in another culture that's not modest. So we're not talking about specifics like whether your skirt should be this long or that long or however, but just generally in your own setting, what does the Torah tell us about honoring God through modesty?
Well, first of all, that statement that I said before, that that our tradition refers to women as the daughters of the king. So there's a statement that goes on and says that all of her beauty and all of her honor is inward. And I think you made a very, very good point. Modesty is not just how you look on the outside. You can dress the part, but at the same time, you might not be modest. And in Judaism, modesty is also an inner quality. It has to do with the way you present yourself, the way you behave, the way you talk. There's many, many different character traits that go into, what would be defined as a modest person, and certainly what would be defined as a modest woman. And so, arrogance has no place in our tradition. So yeah, I really think that it's really, really important that we develop this modesty, but again, not the outward modesty, that's also important, but that we develop an inner modesty. We're kind with our words. We speak in a tone that respects people. We speak in a tone that doesn't make us look like we're any better than somebody else. That's the way we behave when we're modest. And that's an important part of how we carry ourselves.
That is a fantastic point, because you can legislate even in religious schools, measuring the length of skirts or measuring things and just concentrating on the external. But you can't legislate a person's heart.
Yeah.
But you can encourage it. So yes, I'm going to say that I think that really describes maybe the difference between Hebraic and Hellenistic thought, and because the church has generally fallen more under Hellenistic thinking, the Greek, the outside is what's important, but I know that Hebraic thought has more to do, instead of saying that vial is brown and it's got a curve on the bottom and it's got lines, it might be it contains precious oil. It's used for anointing. It's used for blessing, rather than what does it look like. So
yes.
Very, very, very helpful. Yeah, I love the fact that when I've heard you speak before, you are always praising your wife as the most righteous woman in the world. And so tell us what that means to you.
Well, first of all, I wanted to make a point that, every Friday night, of course, a very important day for us is the Shabbat. And the Shabbat starts on Friday night, and we begin the Shabbat meal with some singing.
Yes.
And one of the songs that we sing, we welcome the angels, Shalom Aleichem, but one of the songs that we sing is a song called Eshet Chayil, written by King Solomon.
Yes.
And in Eshet Chayil, it's a song to our mothers, to our wives, to our daughters, right? It's a song that praises the woman of valor. And we do that every single Friday night. And we have to do it with tremendous amount of emotion, and we have to do it with a tremendous amount of intention. And in that song it says, Sheker hachen vehevel hayofi, right? That beauty is vain, outward beauty is vain. But what are we really looking for? We're looking for a woman who has the awe and the fear of God. It's something that's inside of you. And yes, I'm very lucky that I actually met such a woman who really imbues, I think, a tremendous amount of spiritual values, very inward, very modest, and really takes her religious life, her Jewish life, very, very seriously.
I just want to move now to the location of your school. As I said in my introduction, I first met Rabbi at his school in Jerusalem, and our women's prayer group were just astounded, not just to hear about the school and why it's there, but to go up onto a rooftop deck. And I said to somebody, if we were eating lunch, we could throw, not that we would, our olive pits onto the Temple Mount. It is right in the old city, just about adjacent to the Temple Mount. And women from all over the world come to study at your yeshiva. And the tuition might be considered steep for a lot of people, like, to study Torah. They can do that in their own homes. Why would they spend this money and send their daughters all across the world? What is the significance of being located where you are? Because I know part of the cost is because it's an expensive place to rent or to own property, for sure, in Jerusalem. Why is this worthwhile?
Well, first of all, we're at the heart of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, our seminary is the closest women's school to the Temple Mount in the world. So
it has to be.
That
it's
is
practically there.
There are a number of men's schools closer, but ours is the closest women's school, and that in and of itself is, of course, is a draw. And I think that also just to study a year in Israel, our program is a year. Students could stay longer, but to come and study a year in Israel, Israel is the land of the Bible. That's where our religion started, and that's where many religions started. And so for a person who wants to take a year and study religious studies, certainly in Judaism, what better opportunity than to come to Israel, to actually live step by step what it is that you're studying. And then when you come to Israel, what could be better than literally coming to the heart of the Jewish world, and that is the city of Jerusalem. And like you said, it's like literally steps away from the Temple Mount. The Kotel is, I think, 30-second walk from our building. So that's extremely attractive.
Oh, it definitely is the Western Wall, and also because the Jewish presence is so important to maintain, where prices are going up and landlords are starting to ask for exorbitant prices to be there. To maintain a Jewish presence is so key in the land where God said, "I will put my name there forever."
That's
right. And Jerusalem is significant to Sephardic Jews. Is that correct?
It is. It's significant, of course, to
all Jews,
all
of course,
Judaism,
and
but
Christians.
There's a special history to the Sephardic Jews, and that is that in the year the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492.
Right.
There was a large contingency that went to Turkey. The Sultan of Turkey actually said to the king and queen of Spain that if you don't want the Jews, we do. And so there was, I think, about 150,000 Jews came from Spain to the Ottoman Empire. That was 1492. In the year 1517, the Ottoman Empire conquered Israel, and it was a dream come true for all of these Sephardic Jews who had been praying 3 times a day to return to Zion.
Right.
And now they didn't even need a passport.
Right.
And so in 1517, there was a tremendous influx of Jews from the Ottoman Empire. They built Jerusalem, Tiberias, Tzfat, and Hebron. And now there was a very prominent Jewish community there. And they actually built the city of Jerusalem.
Why? This may sound like an odd question, but why should Christians care about Jerusalem?
Well, first of all, I think that Jerusalem is the center of the world. Of course, from Christians, there's a lot of important history in the city of Jerusalem. There's a Christian quarter, there's an Armenian quarter, which is also Christian as well. So half of the old city of Jerusalem is Christian. That's the first thing. And if we look at all the prophecies and we look at what God wanted for the Jewish people, there's no question that God wants the Jewish people to be in the land of Israel. God gave Abraham, it was already started with Abraham, and then we have all the different prophecies, and we're seeing that literally unravel in front of our eyes today. Who would have thought after 2,000 years of exile in 1948, we would have a state, and that's happening. And that is God's plan if we follow the Bible, and that's good for everyone. It's good for the entire world.
That's
right.
So
if the Jewish people come back to the land of Israel and they build and they resettle the land of Israel, it's good for the whole world because that's God's plan.
That's right. He said to Abraham, and all the people of the world will be blessed. The nations of the world will be blessed through the people, the covenant people, God's chosen people. And that is true. We are blessed in so many ways. And that's part of our job, is to tell people about what a blessing the Jewish people have been, continue to be. The land of Israel is not just flourishing only for Jews, it's flourishing and it's exporting all of the incredible technological advances, agricultural advances, medical advances. You now make water out of air and export it to places where there's issues with water, and sometimes at no charge. So it really matters. Jerusalem is where we all believe history is important. It's important now and the future in Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. Now, lastly, tell us what some of your graduates from the school are doing today.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to touch on a point that you said before, that we have students from all over the world, and indeed we really do. Of course, we get many students from Canada, the United States. We've had students from Mexico, Argentina, Gibraltar, Australia, England, Europe. So it really is an international endeavor. And our students today, they go into so many different fields. Many of them are already married, mothers with families, but most of our students actually go on to higher education. They come to Israel for a year and then they go back to their countries. The vast majority go on to university, study a profession. Of course, they want to also begin families, but they've gone into many, many, many different fields. We have students who are, have gone into medicine, students who have gone into different fields, education. And so our students, we place a tremendous amount of importance on higher education. And this is only the beginning. And of course, we also encourage our students to not only go into university studies, but to continue with their religious studies. And we actually have a follow-up program today because of Zoom. We have classes all the time, and our students, I just gave a class just a couple of weeks ago to students from, I think it was 8 years ago. They all just kind of wrote me an email and said, Rabbi Benarroch, we'd love to have a class with you. And we just hooked up on Zoom. I think there was like 25 students on the call, and we just had a class together.
And how wonderful to learn excellently, if I can say that, and skills, and go on into these different fields of importance and expertise, or just to be good people in their homes as mothers. But under Torah, they're also knowing the call to tikkun olam, to bless the world. That's our call. That's the call of the Jewish people, to be to repair the world. And so what they're learning is in the light of how can we repair the world, which is great.
Yeah.
And so for our guests, our viewers in Winnipeg, Rabbi Benarroch spends half of his time in his synagogue, the Adas Yeshurun Herzlia, am I saying that correctly? Synagogue in Winnipeg, and you can actually partake in his teaching. And all the information is on the website, and we'll have that information available for you at the end of the show and on our website as well. It's been such a pleasure to hear from you. I know our viewers will be enlightened, and I say thank you and bless you for all that you are doing in Israel and in Winnipeg and with our Jewish and Christian community. We appreciate the partnership and the friendship that we have.
Thank you. My great pleasure. And I say the same to you as well. We really appreciate it. Certainly Bridges for Peace. We certainly appreciate everything that you do for the Jewish community. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching this episode of Women of the Book. To find out more about our guest or the ministry of Bridges for Peace, please follow these links or visit our website at bridgesforpeace.com.